When I was 14 years old, I had a paper route, about 200 houses. Every day that meant folding newspapers, rubber banding them, and loading them into bags that went over my handlebars and over my shoulders. And on certain days, it wasn't too bad. The papers were thin. I could load everything up and ride my bike and get through the whole route in one trip. But Thursdays were a problem. That's when all the coupons came out. And don't even get me started about Sundays. That paper was huge. And on those days, I was supposed to make probably 2 trips. But of course, I didn't just accept that. I thought, I can carry it. So I'd load up everything anyway, over the handlebars, over my shoulders, stacked as high as I could get it. And then I'd try to ride, and almost immediately, I couldn't steer. The bike would wobble, pull to one side. I was fighting just to stay upright. And eventually, I had to admit, I was carrying too much. If you've ever felt like that, this episode's for you. Welcome to Faith in the Friction, a podcast about finding strength, resilience, and hope in difficult places. I'm Sean, here in the T.W. Lewis Studio 42, and today we're talking about something that a lot of us experience, but don't always recognize. Not just that life is busy, but that we're carrying too much. Because this isn't just about a full schedule. It's about weight, mental weight, emotional weight, relational weight, responsibility and expectations and pressure. And over time, it all adds up. And the problem is, a lot of us don't realize we are carrying too much until we can't steer anymore, until we feel off balance, overwhelmed, exhausted. And even then, we don't always lighten the load. We just try harder. We push more and carry more. Because somewhere along the way, we started believing that strength means carrying everything. Jesus speaks directly into this. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, I'll help you carry everything you've picked up. He says, come to me. In other words, you don't just need more strength, you need a different load. Because the issue is not just that you're tired, it's that you're carrying things you were never meant to carry. So let's talk about some things that will actually help when we're carrying too much. The first thing we need to do is identify what it is that we're carrying that's actually ours to carry. What is actually ours to carry? This is where it starts, because most of us aren't overwhelmed just because life is full. We're overwhelmed because we're carrying things that aren't ours. And the challenge is those things don't show up labeled. They feel like responsibility. They feel like care and leadership. But there's a difference between what you're responsible to and what you're responsible for. You may be responsible to people, to care for them, to lead them, to support them, but you're not responsible for their decisions, their emotions, their outcomes. And when you blur that line, you start carrying weight that was never assigned to you. So here's a simple way to make this practical. Take a moment and ask, what is actually mine to carry right now? Make it specific. Not everything, not the whole situation, just your part. And then ask, what am I carrying that's not mine? That conversation you keep replaying, that outcome you're trying to control, that person you're trying to fix. Because clarity is the first step to relief. Once you do that, we need to release what's not ours. Once you see it, you have to release it. And this is where most of us kind of get stuck, because letting go feels irresponsible. It feels like if you don't carry this, who will? But here's the truth. Everything holding on to everything is not strength. It's unsustainable. And eventually it will cost you something, your peace, your clarity, your energy. So what does releasing actually look like? It's not dramatic. It's not walking away from everything. It's intentional. It sounds like I'm going to care, but I'm not going to carry. It looks like setting a boundary, letting someone else take responsibility, choosing to not overfunction for someone else, choosing to not fix something that isn't yours to fix. And maybe most importantly, it looks like trusting God with what you're trying to control. Because sometimes what we're really holding on to is fear. We have to learn to accept our limits. This one's hard because if you're anything like me, you feel like you don't have any limits, or at least you don't like admitting that you have limits. I learned this in a very memorable way. When my wife and I were moving out of our very first apartment, we lived up on the second floor, and I had already carried down most of the boxes and most of the furniture, and then it was time for the refrigerator. No problem. I had an appliance dolly, so I strapped the refrigerator to the dolly and got it to the door. Now, I'll admit, there was a brief moment where I thought, maybe I shouldn't take this down the stairs by myself. But I dismissed that pretty quickly because in my mind, I've got this. Getting it out the door was a bit of a struggle, but I figured that was the hard part. So I get to the top of the stairs and I carefully lower it down the first step. Everything's fine. Second step, still good. Third, fourth, and then somewhere around the fifth step, I got a little too confident, a little too fast. And in a split second, I realized something. This refrigerator had a mind of its own, and it had decided it was going down these stairs with or without me. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled back as hard as I could, and I just sat down. Now, the good news is it stopped the refrigerator, but the bad news is it stopped it right on top of me. So now I'm here wedged between the stairs and a refrigerator, realizing that if I move at all, this thing is going to take off and I'm going with it. And I'm stuck, completely stuck. Fortunately, a very kind and very amused neighbor found me and helped me out of the situation that I had clearly created for myself. And here's the thing, the problem wasn't that I couldn't move a refrigerator. The problem was that I tried to do it alone and all at once. And I ignored the limit and it caught up with me. And we do this all the time. We push past our limits, ignore warning signs, and dismiss that internal voice that says, this might be too much. Because we think that strength means pushing through. But limits aren't weakness. They're part of how you were designed. You have limits, limits of time and energy and attention. You have limits of capacity, and when you ignore them, you don't become stronger, you become overwhelmed. You lose control, just like I did on those stairs. So what does it look like to accept our limits? It looks like saying no, even when you could say yes. It looks like resting before you're completely exhausted. It looks like recognizing I can do this, but not right now. Or I can do this, but not at the cost of everything else. Because wisdom's not just knowing what you can do, it's knowing what you should do. And lastly, we need to trade burdens, not just drop them. This is where this all comes together because Jesus doesn't say, stop carrying things. He says, come to me. And then he says, take my yoke. That's an exchange. You don't just drop the weight, you trade it. And that matters because if you just drop things without direction, you'll pick them back up. But when you exchange them, you step into a different way of living, a different pace, a different posture. So what does that look like practically? It looks like this. You take the things that are weighing you down and you bring it back to God. Not once, but consistently. You name it. You release it. You give it over. And then you take on what He gives you: clarity, peace, direction. He doesn't give it all at once, but He gives it over time, because His burden is not heavy. His pace is not overwhelming. And when you begin to live that way, you don't just feel lighter, you actually move differently. When I think back to that paper route, what stands out for me now is not how heavy the papers were. It's what happened when I tried to carry too much all at once. Because the moment I overloaded those bags, everything changed. I couldn't steer. The bike started pulling in different directions. I was fighting just to stay up. Every little bump felt bigger. Every turn felt harder. I wasn't moving smoothly anymore. I was trying not to crash. And I think that's exactly what happens in our lives when we're carrying too much. We lose the ability to steer. We lose clarity. We lose focus. We feel pulled in different directions, emotionally, mentally, relationally. Instead of moving forward with purpose, we're just trying to hold everything together. We're just trying not to drop anything, trying not to fall apart, trying not to crash. And over time, that creates a constant sense of pressure. You feel off balance. You feel out of control. And here's the part that's really easy to miss. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're overloaded. Just like that bike, the issue wasn't that I didn't know how to ride. The issue was I was trying to carry more than I was designed to carry. And unless until I made the second trip, nothing was going to feel stable. And the same is true for you. Until you lighten the load, you're going to keep feeling that tension, that imbalance, that pressure. Not because something is wrong with you, but because you're just carrying too much. I wish I could say I learned my lesson with that refrigerator, but if I'm honest, I still find myself doing the same thing. There are times in my life when I carry too much, trying to hold everything together, trying to be everything for everyone. And sometimes it doesn't feel like a problem at first. It feels like responsibility and leadership. It feels like I'm caring. People need me. Things need to get done. There are expectations. And somewhere along the way, I stop asking, what's mine to carry? And I just start carrying everything. And that weight builds slowly. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Until one day you realize you're tired in a way that rest doesn't fix. You're distracted. You're stretched thin. You're present, but not really present. And if you're not careful, you start to believe that this is just what life is. This constant pressure, this constant weight. This constant weight is normal and everybody has it, but it's not. And what I've had to learn sometimes the hard way is this. Just because I can carry something doesn't mean I'm supposed to. There are things that I can do, but I shouldn't do. There are things that I can hold together, but I was never meant to hold them together. And when I ignore that, it doesn't just affect me, it affects how I lead, how I show up, how I connect with people. Because when you're carrying too much, you don't have anything left to give. And over time, I've learned that strength is not measured by how much you carry. It's measured by how wisely you choose what to carry. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, don't just ask, how do I push through this? Ask maybe, what am I carrying that I don't need to? Because the answer might not be more strength. It might be less weight. Maybe you don't need to push harder. Maybe you need to put something down. Thanks for listening to Faith in the Friction. If this episode has encouraged you or made you realize something, maybe share it with someone who might need to hear it. We'll see you next time.